Everyone, it's Katrine with Blend Precisely, and today we are coming live on a Sunday, and it has a reason because this week was actually quite filled with not only birthdays, but we also want to make sure that, or I wanted to make sure that today Seth is going to be online as well. And I will see just a second that I invite him in here. And then it should all work. So if you're watching, just give me 1 second because I'm trying to get Seth in here because he's going to mostly talk about what we are going to see today around the drops and everything else. And then I have a chat open. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. I'm aware it's Sunday today, so it might be not so easy for you to join today, but I hope you're going to watch the replay because it's going to be really, really cool. And there he is. Okay, let me pull him in. Hang on just a second. All right, so you should be able to see him. I'm going to put on my big headphones because then I can hear him as well. I'm going to look like a monkey, but that's okay. So can you actually hear me, Seth?
Yep, I can hear you.
I can't hear you.
Okay.
I can't hear you. Let's see. Maybe you have. Try it one more time.
Okay, can you hear me now?
No, I can't hear you. Let me just see if I need to do something with my settings. But I do believe that is on your side. And we are actually in the same house. We just wanted to do it in 2 different rooms because it makes it easier for you to see both of us a bit more clear. But can you say something, Seth?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, now it's good. Okay, now I can hear you. Okay, perfect. Wonderful. All right, so we are here today, and I've got my notes again and everything else so I don't miss anything. So we are here. First of all, Blend Precisely. In case you don't know us, I'm Katrine, and I'm an aromatherapist, and I work with Seth on the Blend Precisely tool. And some of you might know it already, others don't. And we also have the Blend Precisely Academy, which is all about business growth and business learning. Now, Blend Precisely itself, and that's what it's going to be about today, grew out of frustration a few years back, where I actually, as an aromatherapist, got really nut about all the calculations. And I just really wanted to focus basically on helping my clients and obviously doing my blends and everything else. But there was always the business side and the calculation side to everything. And before you really calculate a blend and get the price for a blend and get your raw ingredients and everything else, I really went once, I think, through the houses like, Seth, can you just help me? Because this is driving me nuts. I've got 1,000 spreadsheets. I don't want to deal with this anymore. Is there any program you could write? And he said, yes, sure. And here we are a few years later, actually, and we have Blend Precisely. Now, we are also adding pretty much every month a new feature, which is coming from our lovely, lovely members, and everything they would like to see, or another feature enhancement or a change and whatnot else, gets put on our roadmap, and then we talk about it and see how much of a feedback we actually get from people. And if there's something really pressing, we move it to the top of the list. And other than this, we are trying to really add new features which will help you or the people who are using Blend Precisely to make just your aromatherapy life easier on the business side. Sylvia says, hello, Seth, happy birthday. Yeah, so it was Seth's birthday yesterday, and we celebrated it really sweet and nice in Lisbon. It was a wonderful day. Thank you, Sylvia. So that's the story a little bit around or behind Blend Precisely. So the tool is really here to make your business life easier, especially on the calculation side. And there are so many other little features around. And Seth is going to take you today to the new, hello, Megan. Happy birthday from Megan as well. Seth is going to take you through the new feature, which is going to be the well-known, how many drops does it take to have a 1% dilution? Now, I'm going to ask you a few questions, Seth, in a moment, because those are the questions I would ask if I'm a new aromatherapist, but also just in case you're new or you're just done with your aromatherapy certification, you might not know, but we are trying to see that most of the people using the program, or what we are suggesting basically is weigh all your products, but we of course know from most schools that we are still being taught in drops, and that is actually what I wanted to say. So I'm going to not quite hand you over right now. So we're going to have a screen sharing session. But so this new feature today, Seth, can you just talk a little bit about what you implemented? Like a week ago, I think we went live with it. Just a little bit about why you implemented it and what it does.
Yeah, sure. So we discovered that many of the schools are teaching different sizes of a drop. So we want the tool to behave in a way that allows people to use the app in a way that they learned at school.
Can I just interrupt one moment? You seem a little bit not so loud. I'm just wondering if others don't hear you very well too. So maybe your input audio needs to come up a little bit more.
Okay.
I don't want anybody to miss anything. So
Okay, how's that?
yeah, that's better. I think that's better.
Okay,
So let
great.
us know if you don't hear us or if anything is missing or happening.
Yeah. All right. I'll
Sorry.
just repeat. I'll just repeat that last part. So yeah, we needed a way to accommodate different schools' preferences for how big a drop is. So some schools say there's 20 drops per ounce or 30 drops per milliliter, or something like 5 drops per ounce equals 1%. So it's different, and unfortunately, there's no standards. So we're giving that ability to people to essentially take what they learned and use the app in the way that they learned.
So do you think, I mean, from my perspective, I know why schools might be teaching actually the drops, but why are all these different rules out there, you think? Why is one school saying 5 to 6? And I'm asking you actually because he did a ton of research, Seth. But why are schools sometimes saying 5 to 6 drops in 30 milliliters or 1 ounce equal 1%, and others say 9 drops and so on? Do you know the history a little bit around it?
I have a partial history. A little birdie told me that once upon a time, somebody told all of the aromatherapists that the correct measurement was 20 drops per milliliter. And the schools took that and converted it into an ounce unit for the Americans. And I think that some of the schools actually did their own testing just to see what it is. But the problem is that the size of an orifice, the thing that you drop with, can be different size depending on brand and a few other factors.
Well, including also just if you use a normal dropper, not even just the I hate that word, orificer. Even just a regular dropper, actually, you can, the ones you can buy, even those ones are inaccurate most of the time when you do the drop calculations. So we did once a video, maybe like a year ago or so, where we did 3 times the same formulation and dropped it onto the scale, and all 3 times it was different because sometimes there was like an air clock in the how do you call these little vials coming out of the dropper? I don't actually know. But anyway, so they were always a little bit different. So what do you think the downfall is of using drops? I mean, why do you think drops shouldn't be used?
Well, they're just inaccurate, and as you discovered, they're variable. So you
Yeah.
have to be extremely careful to get it exactly correct. So there's other ways to measure that are much more accurate, like a scale, or even using chemistry titration tube to do that. But
Okay.
drops are just too inaccurate.
But I also found that even the safety aspect of drops can change if you use drops now, especially when I worked with the app again, where I could see that the difference is quite interesting. That if you put in 5 to 6 drops versus 9 drops, you can almost go half
Yeah, that's
in the
correct.
percentage. But
Yeah,
also what I found, even for pricing, it makes a difference, and also for the consistency in repeating the same formulation, it is different. So before when I years ago when I did the drop thing as well, I used drops and I could feel that the recipes were always a little bit and slightly off, or maybe sometimes even by a lot, depending if I just got a new oil from a different supplier. So mostly I use Floriana oils, but in America, they are the aromatics. I mean, we have many different suppliers, and they all brought out a different drop. So when I used, let's say, wild orange or an orange bottle from way back then, doTERRA even versus Floriana, the drop size is like almost a quarter of what doTERRA brings out. So for me, that was astonishing, but it also made then a difference in price, and then the consistency of the recipe of the formulations for my clients. They always came out slightly different until I started using the until I started using the scale. Actually, it was quite different all.
yeah. If you can imagine, if you were communicating a recipe to a client that actually makes the blend themselves, and you used one dropper size and they use a different dropper size, there are situations where they can actually be injured by this. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Sylvia was just saying, let me just see. Exactly, Sylvia. The viscosity of an oil can also make a difference, and absolutely. I think Seth, we mentioned that we are looking at 0.91 grams mostly. No, not grams. 0.91. The what was it? The volume. An
if
oil
it,
per drop is no, the volume. I always leave it up to Seth. This kind of stuff.
okay. All right.
But
Yeah. So yeah, it's just the variation, according to some research that Robert Tisserand did, is between 20 drops per milliliter and 40 drops per milliliter.
And I
Um,
actually put this link, by the way, for everybody who's watching this, I put this link into the write-up above the video now. There's the link to Robert Tisserand's, the Institute, Tisserand Institute, where he describes it way more in detail. And there's also a blog link where Seth takes it to the nerdy part. Sorry, but that's what it is for me.
okay.
Yeah, so
So
the alternatives are basically scaling and weight, using weight, right? And
yeah,
sorry.
or the cosmetic mode.
And the cosmetic mode, well, in exactly, but that's the
Yeah.
percentage blending. So exactly. So Sylvia, the viscosity of an oil like ylang ylang or vetiver is like incredibly different to just a straight on citrus oil like lemon or orange. But I think we should be probably diving into the sharing session of what this new feature is, so people can maybe see a little bit better what we're talking about, and then we can explain further down the road. So can you do a screen sharing session on your computer? I'm gonna
Yeah.
say,
Sure.
all right, cool.
Screen.
Now I can. I think you can't see the comments anymore, but I can.
Okay. All right. So let me just show you the new preference here.
Yeah. So basically, yeah, can you take us a little bit through? First of all, this one is the preference screen, and we are adding more and more over time, but you can already set your preferences here for every single formulation you want to do. And if you work in cosmetic mode, you can have this one permanently enabled as well. And then at the bottom, it says drops, and that's the new feature.
Right. So I'll give you a little description about why we're doing this on the tooltip. And we give you a link to a website or part of our blog that gives you some of the complexity of what's going on. So you'll notice that there's drops per milliliter and drops per fluid ounce equals 1%. So what we discovered is that there's two ways that schools and people discuss the size of a drop in general. And I believe the drops per fluid ounce equal 1% is the more common way. So we've seen 5 drops per fluid ounce, 9 drops per fluid ounce, and a few variations. I believe that there's a division more or less between the Europeans who prefer the drops per milliliter and drops per fluid ounce equaling some percentage on being the American side. So I'm going to switch over to the drops per fluid ounce. As it turns out, 9 drops per fluid ounce is exactly equivalent to 30 drops per milliliter.
So the default is set to 30 drops per milliliter, right?
Yeah, that's what's considered the average of the drops per milliliter that you'll find just between orifices. So unless anybody gets the wrong idea here, if there may be an average of 30 drops per milliliter, but that doesn't mean it's exactly 30 drops per milliliter for every orificer out there. If you have a brand that has a small size, you might get 30 drops per milliliter out, in which case, 40 drops per milliliter out, in which case this figure will be wrong, or you could have the opposite. So this is just an average to try to approximate well enough for somebody who's using drops. So that's what that's about. So I'm going to demonstrate what 9 drops per fluid ounce looks like.
Yeah, so once you click save, this setting is saved in your preferences, and you can change that at any time as long as you don't have a recipe in there. So just be mindful of that you clear out first, and then you go to the preferences, change that, and come back. So yeah, please.
Okay, great. All right, so here I have a carrier oil of hemp seed oil and a lemongrass of 9 drops. And if you look at the dilution ratio, you see exactly 1%.
And that is because it's now set at 30 drops per milliliter.
9. This is set with the 9.
The 9 drops, sorry.
9 drops per fluid ounce equals 1%.
Okay, gotcha.
Just as a FYI, there's a mathematical equation that relates the drops per milliliter with the drops per fluid ounce, but we're hoping nobody ever has to look down that rabbit hole.
I surely want to do that.
So anyway, that's what's going on. All right, so I'm going to clear this out and look at the same thing, but use the different drops per fluid ounce. And let's just say 5, which is one of the schools that we talked to actually does this. All right, and we'll bring up the same 9 drops per ounce setting. And you'll see that it says 1.83 dilution percent.
So that's almost double, basically. So one school teaches 5 drops, let's say 5 to 6 drops. And I remember Aromahead taught this when I went to school, and I went to school with Aromahead. But then we did like a little poll the other day, like a week or 2 weeks ago, we did a poll. What did your school actually teach you? And we saw a little bit all over the place, but dominantly it was 5 to 6 drops, but also 9 drops. per fluid ounce or 30 milliliters equals 1%. Now, what you have there is, so if you were to use the 5-drop, what you learned, 5 drops, then, okay, this one is the 9-drop recipe. So the 5 drops would give
Right.
you 1.01%.
Right. Yeah. So if I just change this to 5, you'll see it goes back to the 1%. And that
Wow,
would,
so the difference is almost double. So if you were to make a recipe with, let's say, with some kind of a skin-sensitive oil, for example, which lemongrass actually is.
yeah, if you look
Right.
at this one, it's the topical max is 0.7. So even at 5 drops, you'd probably want to reduce this a little bit so that you're not doing something
Going
to somebody.
above.
Right. So you'd probably want to drop it down. But you can see that if you do have something that's like phototoxic or is
Skin sensitive.
skin sensitive, then you could definitely bust it by simply having the wrong number of drops. So we show this information over here in the pop-up, but we also show it over here in the dedicated safety information panel.
So that means if you work with 9 drops, for example, in this example, if you were to work with 9 drops, then you're definitely over the 0.7% topical max, and you would need to go down quite a bit. But if you work with 5 to 6 drops, what you maybe got taught in school, then it's already a little bit better. So would you say that normally, and that's interesting because even the 5 to 6 drops, it can be so inaccurate because of the different dropper sizes that you might end up just theoretically now with 2 or 3 drops. That means you can even, I mean, 2 to 3 drops in terms of weight, if you were to compare them all, that means that you basically almost have nothing in there, pretty much depending on what your orificer size is, right? Or the viscosity, as Sylvia mentioned as well.
Yeah, to just kind of emphasize the point a little bit, I wrote a blog post about this. I don't know if this is visible on.
I
This
can
is,
see it right now. It's a bit
can you?
small, but
It's
that's
small.
on my screen. No,
Let's see
it's
if
my screen, I think.
I can blow it up a little bit here. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so on the left, you see the dilution ratio, and on the right, you see the different drops per milliliter.
So the orange one is 20 drops, the yellow one is 30 drops per milliliter, and then the green one is 40 drops per milliliter.
Right, and on the bottom is the amount in the carrier oil. So the smaller the amount of the carrier oil is, the worse it gets. The amount of, so if you were to have like 100 milliliters, and the differences get smaller and smaller. So the dilution ratio really matters here. So I don't know if this helps you in any way, but that's just kind of a graphical representation of what we've been talking about.
Yeah, so basically if you go down to the little these little cells there, I think you have an example below: almond oil, lavender, peppermint, and West India Bay is in there. And then it does showcase, oh, and then you have this as a example down below.
Yeah. So we also have a link to Tisseron's source information here as well, if you want to find that.
Do you have it open?
Yeah, we do.
Oh, okay. How many drops of essential? That's
Yeah,
the 20,
so
30, 40.
yeah. So basically, what he did is he went out and he investigated a few scientific sources and gave an average from that.
I love that he mentions always his references.
Oh, me too.
Really.
I love that guy.
Yeah. Yeah, he's really amazing. Okay, so if you have any questions, just feel free to ask them. And if something is confusing, please ask that as well. Because for my part, all I want to do is blend. but I do need to understand, of course, what comes with it. So the alternative, Seth, to using these drops, and you implemented that because we know we have a lot of schools that create new students or new certified aromatherapists, and they all have a different way of working with their blends. And I think they will all appreciate it. Yet we do wish that most of us will be using the weighing option. So as an alternative, if you clear this out here, we do have the cosmetic mode as well. And the cosmetic mode will give you the possibility of a more professional way of blending and creating formulations, because you have the opportunity then to go by percentage. And that will obviously help a lot if you want to create blends over and over again, especially for clients. You want to be the trustworthy source of blends, and that they are always working the same way as they're supposed to. So if you do the blending here, Seth, you want to explain just a little bit the cosmetic mode in case you're moving away from the drops or you're trying out the cosmetic mode maybe. And by the way, we only called cosmetic mode because cosmetic formulation is going by percentage in grams or milliliters. They're not using at all drops. They are not using tablespoons, teaspoons, cups, and everything else, which is a horrifying thought for a cosmetic formulator. So we are formulating as aromatherapists. And therefore, I think it is important that we start at least looking or trying it out.
Yeah, I think the industry is slowly approaching what the cosmetic and perfumery sorts of people do. So just briefly, the total here is so representing 100 grams in this case. We've only provided two, oh, that shouldn't be there, 2 units, grams and milliliters. And those are basically just for your information. For the most part, you don't care because you're basically saying, I want to do this recipe or this formulation by percentage. So if somebody said they wanted to, you could pass this percentage formulation to anybody. And if they wanted to use teaspoons, they could say, oh, need 99 teaspoons and one teaspoon of lavender, or whatever crazy unit you want to use. But what we found is that the people that do this professionally tend to use either grams or milliliters, which is why it just makes it easy to see what the specific values are. We have some features coming down the pike on our roadmap that will expand on this, but we'll get into that later.
Can you just give me, like, I think that was one of my first little questions, is like, Seth, why is it 1.01%?
Right. So what we do on the back end, there's a small difference in the density of each of the oils. So if you say you have, for example, 100 milliliters of hemp seed oil and 1 milliliter of lavender oil, we compute on the back end, we convert everything to just grams. And there's about, I think the density is about 0.91 on average for all essential oils. So there's a very tiny adjustment that's made on the back end, and there's a little bit of a rounding adjustment that's made to get to the percentage.
That's what I actually was looking for, the density before the word. I could not, the 0.91 density.
Yeah. So in fact, in Robert's blog here, he's making an approximation that you can basically interchange grams and milliliters because the density is so close. You basically multiply, grams divided by grams per milliliter to get the volume. So if it's 1, then it doesn't matter. It's approximately the same. And since there's such a huge variation between drop size, it really just doesn't matter. in terms of drops, it's roughly equivalent. Just one, you could say 1 gram per milliliter is the density of any essential oil. But not in terms of, if you're using values like grams and milliliters, that's not correct. But for drops, yeah, drops are kind of a hand wave anyway.
So could you maybe just for one more time go back into the preferences and just show the 2 drop downs, what is available in the preferences? So on the left-hand side for the drops per milliliter, so you have a drop down here too, and you can change those.
Right.
Is it between 20 and 40, I believe, or 20
Yeah,
and
exactly.
yeah.
I
Okay.
did talk to one of our clients who went out and bought some very cheap droppers, and they were below 20, which I was shocked to find.
Wow.
So yeah, I don't know what to say about that, but it's not a good idea.
No. So, and then one more time, the drop down for the fluid ounce and 1%. So you have an entire list of what they can go from 12 drops. So we basically incorporated what we have seen so far from our poll we did the other week, which I believe did not go beyond 12 drops per fluid ounce, equaling 1%. So we're giving that option as well in both cases. So
If you actually do find that your school is using something larger than that or smaller than that, we'll just add it in. But we haven't seen that yet.
No. And then the default, again, just to wrap things up here, the default setting is 30 drops per milliliter. So if you don't do anything and you use the aromatherapy blending side, it will be the 30 drops per milliliter, which equals what you said mathematically, the 9 drops per fluid ounce,
Yeah, that's correct.
equaling 1%, right?
Yep.
So this will be set here, but the preferences again is up to the upper right corner where your name is. That's where you can set the preferences, and then you can go as you would like to. And then if you would like to use the cosmetic mode, you can try it out by either setting it here in preferences, but also if you go out here, yeah, that's where it is. But if you just go out one more time here and go back to the main screen, you can also set it for one-time use under cosmetic mode here and try it out. So if you're completely new to percentage blending or gram blending, Sasha, she's ripping paper and is doing origami, and it's just, I'm sorry for the noise if that happens. But so if you're completely new, I would totally encourage you to try to see if you could be using cosmetic mode for yourself. It's a different kind of blending, and maybe you're using it already. All right. Well, anything else you would like to add, Seth, in terms of, let me just go out of the screen sharing mode for a moment and get us back here. There we go.
All right.
You're so far away.
Sorry. How's that? Is that a little bit
No,
better?
it's fine.
Okay. Yeah. So I would like to emphasize how bad drops are. I wouldn't go so far as to say they're evil, but
Well, now it's out.
yeah. So I think if you're very familiar and you're a solid aromatherapist and you're very experienced with what you're doing, you're using drops with your tools and your measurements, and you know how they work, and whoever you're giving it to is using the same things, I think you're okay. The trouble comes in when you're trying to share something and somebody's using a different brand or different tools to come up with you to repeat your formula. That's where things go south and unexpected things can happen. I think the most obvious things that couldn't go wrong is you can get phototoxicity. Somebody's foot will burn in the sun if they have to walk out, and their skin sensitization is greater than it should be. Or even a little more concerning would be a pregnant woman and you giving her something that's above a proper dilution. But I will leave that up to the knowledge that you learn at your aromatherapy school.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. So I hope this was really insightful, and I'm so happy that Seth was able to jump in. There's not too much time for him actually to always be on the live calls, and it's good on the weekend we can do them, but I know that most people are always busy with family, and that's how it should be on the weekend as well. But we definitely wanted to bring this one to you together because it's always a big topic, and we wanted to see and make sure we take a little bit of the guessing work out with the Blend Precisely tool. So thank you for the ones who were able to watch us live, and many, many greetings to all parts of the world. And I think if there's nothing else, we're going to end. Sylvia, thank you. You're welcome. You're so welcome. Absolutely. And even if you watch this one after we are off here right now, we will be looking at all kinds of comments afterwards because we are hungry for input at all times. Any kind of feedback, input, changes, everything. What you have to tell us, we will be listening and for sure trying to implement as we go.
Yeah, I really want to emphasize that. We've discovered that a few people were suffering in silence on a few things that they didn't like about the app. And once I heard about it, it's like, oh, yes, of course, you're right. And I was able to change it very quickly. So I like hearing about things that you don't like or you find troublesome, because if you're experiencing that, the odds are very good that other people are experiencing that as well. So you're not just helping yourself, you're helping other people by saying, hey, can you do something about that thing, whatever that thing is.
Yeah, we don't want anybody to suffer for sure. All right. Well, good. Have a wonderful evening. And then we will see you, or I will see you definitely next week again. And enjoy your Sunday wherever you are. Let's see. We're hungry for your amazing knowledge and updates. Well, that's good too, Sylvia. Thank you. We're trying. All right. Well, have a good day, evening, night. And I see you next week. All right. Bye. Ciao, ciao.
Bye.
And you can watch the replay for sure.